Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
Do you love movies? So do I. What's up, y'all? It's KB, and I love movies, inviting you to listen to The Conversation, a film podcast where passion meets perspective and opinion. From the old school to the new, I invite a guest on to discuss the movies that thrill us, challenge us, break our hearts, or even blow our minds. There's always new episodes dropping wherever you get your podcasts. So join the conversation. We don't just watch movies. We love talking about them too. The Conversation with KB Loves Movies, a part of Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Welcome to Wake Up Heavy, my weird dad's weird podcast about weird movies.
Hello and welcome to Wake Up Heavy Recollections of Horror. This is Why Didn't I Rent This? Episode 2. This time I'll be talking about the 1973 film Messiah of Evil that was written, produced, and directed by Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz. They were a screenwriting duo and couple that ended up writing some notable movies throughout the years. They did the screenplay for American Graffiti, as well as the screenplay for Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. They also wrote and Willard Huyck directed the Marvel superhero movie to end all Marvel superhero movies, Howard the Duck.
I'm a freak, an outcast.
It's so lifelike and realistic.
Bug off.
I may be conflating things again. This might not actually be an example of why didn't I rent this. I had the idea that I had seen this video box image back in my renting days. When I kind of looked into the movie, I'm not even sure it was available on video back then. I'm kind of getting a lot of foreign box images when I do a search, and I have a recollection of the movie poster. Other than seeing it in a video store some 35 years ago, I don't really know where I would have seen it. I came upon the movie because of a couple blogs that I had been reading on horror movies. One of them, Horror Movie A Day, I kind of did a deep dive into a couple years back because I was looking for, oddballs and weirdo movies. Since this guy had set a task for himself to watch a horror movie a day, he was having to watch a lot of crap. And this was one of the gems, and I recognized the title, and when I looked it up, I recognized the images and just assumed that it was something that I passed on back in the VHS days. Whether that's true or not, I don't really know, and I'm not going to worry too much about hard and fast rules for this or for the main Wake Up Heavy episodes. Whether I actually watched something a million times back in the 80s or not is kind of irrelevant. I'm sorry, I've got a scratch in my throat. I think the main point here for the why didn't I rent this is seeing something now that I know I would have really enjoyed if I had watched it back then. And I can totally see watching this on a Saturday afternoon on Action Theater and being really, really intrigued and kind of doing what I did like for Tourist Trap, searching the TV guide weekly for however long it took for it to show up again. It is one of those unintentionally surreal movies because it actually wasn't finished. The movie was taken away from Hayek and Katz, and a couple years later, a French producer, I think, got a hold of the unedited footage and tried to cobble it together into a movie. And so it was shot in 1971 and not released until 1973. And it went through, kind of the drive-in, grindhouse, exploitation circuit under numerous names. One of them, in the mid-70s, the title a promoter tried to use was The Return of the Living Dead, and they used the tagline that had been used in Dawn of the Dead and ended up getting into some trouble with George Romero. So beside the unintentional surrealism, which I think I have established firmly that I love, it has a couple other things that I tend to lean toward in movies, and that is a seaside town, which I have discussed in Dead and Buried and Halloween 3. And it also involves a cult, but this cult is a little different because they are zombie-like vampires, and they are awaiting the return of their Messiah of Evil. And of course, none of this is explained very clearly throughout the movie, so we never really know who the Messiah of Evil is. And there were whole chunks of film left unfinished, and that creates the confusion for a lot of this. And again, I think if I had watched this when I was 13 years old, I would have had no thought that this was basically a hack job. Like I've said before, I just kind of took things at face value. Even now, I'm like, they kind of made a movie out of it, so it works on a dreamlike level, and that's always cool with me. So some of the notable things that we have in the movie are a rat-eating albino who likes Wagner, but can't pronounce the name correctly.
You like Wagner?
We have an artist's house with strange murals throughout that really give it a creepy feel. It's a lot of human figures. So every once in a while, the camera will pan around and it's a mural, but you think it's a person, and it is super creepy. And for some reason, there is also an escalator in this artist's house. And we've got cops with motorcycle helmets, even though they're driving around in a patrol car. We have numerous zombie-like figures bleeding from the eyeballs and other orifices that silently attack people. We've got a really interesting cast of kind of newer faces, newer for the time, and a couple of old standbys that I really, really enjoy. But the main character, our Letty, is played by Mariana Hill, and she was in The Baby, which I mentioned on the last episode, and if you can track it down, watch it. It's so weird. She was in High Plains Drifter. She was on the original Star Trek series, and she was in the Klaus Kinski Creep Fest Schizoid. And then we have Anitra Ford, and I always get the two confused because they look very similar. She was in The Big Bird Cage and Invasion of the Bee Girls, so she was no stranger to exploitation films. And we have Joy Bang from Night of the Cobra Woman and Play It Again Sam, and that is her name. It's not her given name, but it is her married name. So kudos there for marrying a dude with the last name Bang. We've got Royal Dano. Is it Dano or Dano? As our Letty's artist father, who was in a million things. He had been acting since the 40s and ended up kind of getting into a lot of B-movie territory. He was in Killer Clowns from Outer Space, Ghoulies 2, and House 2. And then we have Elisha Cook Jr., who, again, had been acting since the 40s. I loved him in Rosemary's Baby. I've always loved that character of the concierge, I guess, of the apartment building that Rosemary moves into. But he was in a lot of film noir in the 40s, and I particularly like him in The Maltese Falcon and The Big Sleep. And then we have a early appearance of Walter Hill, and he gets killed in the first scene in the movie, gets his throat slit by this girl. I mean, it's a totally out of nowhere scene, and it's, I think, referenced briefly a few scenes later. Why this happens is not explained very well, but he went on to direct a lot of movies, and most notably for me at least, The Warriors and 48 Hours. And they employed a lot of their family members on this film, Hike and Katz. There is Stephen Katz did the cinematography, and that is Gloria Katz's brother. And he went on to work with Tim Burton and John Landis.
That doesn't sound right.
Yes, you are right, Cleo. I misspoke again. Billy Weber was the associate editor on Messiah of Evil, and he went on to work with Tim Burton and also with Terrence Malick and Martin Scorsese. He was the associate editor on Taxi Driver, and he has done editing for a couple of Malick's films. So that was not Stephen Katz. Stephen Katz did work with John Landis, though, on Kentucky Fried Movie.
Catholic high school girls in trouble.
Which I just rewatched recently, oddly enough, and The Blues Brothers, and tons of other movies. So thank you, Cleo, for pointing out my mistakes, as usual, just like you do in real life. I saw multiple Katzes and Hikes in the credits as they rolled, so, that's low-budget independent films. That's what you do. Get family and friends to do all the hard work for you. And then Jack Fisk did the art direction for this movie, and I will be talking about him when I get to probably the finale of the full season of Wake Up Heavy, when I talk about Eraserhead. And he was there in LA with David Lynch and Alan Splett, who had all come from Philadelphia to go to the AFI. So he was already working in film before he got involved with Eraserhead full time. So the basic plot is that Arletty is searching for her artist father, who was living in Point Dune, California, and had been sending her letters that got increasingly strange. And so she is trying to find him. She runs into these three, they're always described as hippies, although they don't really look like hippies, but that's Anitra Ford, Joy Bang, and then Michael Greer. And they're in town doing kind of oral histories about the town and the mysterious happenings there. And they get a really interesting monologue from Elisha Cook Jr. that I should play a portion of here. It reminds me of something that would be in a David Lynch film.
I'm as old as the hills. Mama delivered me herself. She took me from between her legs. Bloody little miss. Just about to feed me to the chickens. And Daddy said, maybe we could use a boy, Lottie. That's how I came into the world.
And there's tons of voiceover in the movie. Arletty does voiceover constantly, and then she's also reading her dad's letters and journals, and those are done in voiceover. And so it's kind of slowly goes through his journal. And instead of her sitting there and reading it in one fell swoop, she would understand what is actually happening in the town right at the get-go. But the way it's kind of structured and edited together, she doesn't get to the crux of the matter until the end of the movie, when it's too late for her because she is already changing herself. And I won't spoil the movie, but suffice to say, there would be no movie if she had actually read all the way through his journal at the beginning. My favorite parts of the movie involve a couple of different set pieces with Anitra Ford and Joy Bang. One of them gets attacked in a supermarket, and the other one gets attacked in a theater, and they're both done really well, super creepy, and it always reminds me of Carnival of Souls for some reason, and I think it's partly to do with how the zombies look, but also just how those scenes are edited. And if you've never seen Carnival of Souls, do yourself a favor and find it and watch it. And to go off on a little tangent here,
It's time for another tangent.
the scene in the movie theater, I just noticed today when I rewatched this that the marquee says that it is going to be I think it's a noir film, Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye, and the movie that she ends up watching, Joy Bang, in the cinema, is a movie called Gone with the West with Sammy Davis Jr., and they never show her and the clips from the movie together, and the movie actually, Gone with the West, came out a year or two after, so this was inserted at some point after 1975 into the film. I don't know if they ran into rights troubles with the footage for Kiss Tomorrow Goodbye or what happened, but it kind of gave me an odd time travel feel because I had looked up the movie that was supposed to be in there, and the credits for that are 1974, and this was shot in 1971. So I don't know what kind of hijinks happened there, but it was changed at some point. And then another little tangent that has to do with the marquee. In Annie Hall, we see the marquee of a movie theater, and it has the House of Exorcism and Messiah of Evil double bill shown on there. And I always think, boy, that would have been a wild double feature to see. And I wonder if Alvy and Annie went to go see that. In a lot of the reading that I've done on this, the creatures are referred to as vampires or vampire-like, and I don't quite understand that. I always have seen them as more of a zombie because they are seen cannibalizing people and eating raw meat and not sucking blood from victims. And they walk around in the daylight. They don't have any other vampiric qualities, so I'm not really sure where that comes from. I think they're more akin to the creatures in something like Let's Scare Jessica to Death than typical vampires. So potato, I guess, but I always think of them more as zombies or ghouls. But the scene in the movie theater is probably the highlight of the movie for me. It unravels slowly, and Joy Bang is there on her own for a while. I think there's one other patron in there, and he just kind of slowly turns around and stares at her, and then the theater just fills up with these people, and she finally realizes this when it's kind of too late, and it is just full of zombies, and they attack. This would be a good place to read the Psychotronic review, and this was on my Psychotronic list, and I didn't really realize it until I matched up one of the alternative titles. So that gives me another reason to believe that this wasn't something that I passed on in the video store. It just completely bypassed me for all those years until I discovered it recently. But that's okay. It still works for why didn't I rent this? And I guess the answer is because I wasn't able to. So here we go. Dead People. 1974 Bedford Enterprises. Producer, director, screenwriters Gloria Katz and Willard Hike. Also released as Messiah of Evil, Return of the Living Dead, Revenge of the Screaming Dead. The writers of American Graffiti made their own Night of the Living Dead imitation. It's a confusing, badly edited story about zombies in a California coastal town. Mariana Hill stars as a woman searching for her father, a surrealist painter, with Joy Bang, Royal Dano or Dano, Elisha Cook, and Michael Greer. When the film was reissued, ads carried a copy line used to promote Dawn of the Dead. When there is no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. George Romero sued. Rated R. This movie is hard to find There is a version on Amazon Prime. It is not very good as far as the picture quality, and also it is not letterbox. This was shot in widescreen format, and it is a 4:3 image. You can find it on YouTube, and it is, again, it's at least in the correct aspect ratio, but it is not a very good image. And I think the second time I watched it, I watched a better version on YouTube, and it is just not there anymore. These movies get taken down quite often, and for something that doesn't have a proper release, I don't have a problem watching it on YouTube. I don't feel that's taking money away from anybody. So get it out there on Blu-ray. Maybe there is a Blu-ray release, I don't know, but generally if there's a good Blu-ray release out there, then it is available on one of the streaming services, and it's not even showing up on Just Watch as being on Amazon Prime, but I know that it is because I looked at it briefly today to see if they still had the old version. So if you can track it down, give it a watch. And I wanted to stop and say thanks again to Chris Reed, aka the Serago 17, for supplying me with a little intro music that I actually used on the last episode and forgot to offer up my thanks to him. And then also to Brian Taylor, aka Candy Killer, for the new little logo for the Why Didn't I Rent This sub-series. And I know that it looks like WDIRT, which would be the name of an awesome radio station, even though it has too many letters. I will leave the previous Why Didn't I Rent This up for a couple more days, and then it'll drop off of SoundCloud and iTunes. And like I mentioned last episode, at some point, either after 5 or 6 of these have been done, I will put them all together in one large episode, a volume 1, let's say, of Why Didn't I Rent This? And that will just stay up for as long as I'm doing this. WDIRT number 2 is in the books. Thanks for listening. This is Mark, and don't forget to wake up heavy.